Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Veronica Manson, and I'm the director of the Italian Cultural Institute in Toronto. As you probably know, June is Italian Heritage Month, and the Istituto Italiano di Cultura has decided to celebrate the occasion with this book presentation and interactive workshop to explore and talk about the concept of Italianity or Italianness, and do pass me the neologism. The subject of today's presentation is, what does feeling Italian mean to you? And we will delve into the exploration of feeling Italian. And it will be an opportunity for you, the audience, to interact with our experts and share your thoughts, opinions, and experience, whether you are Italian or Italian Canadian, or just Italian American, or somebody who really likes and follows Italian language and culture. So I do encourage to use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to respond to this question. And it can be a word or a concept or an idea. Now, Italian society is changing fast and becoming a multi-ethnic country. We are moving, like most Western countries, towards a global citizenship. So this presentation workshop is organized in collaboration with the Italian chapter of the Society for Intercultural Education, Training and Research, SIETAR. Today we have with us three extraordinary speakers that have dedicated their work studying and exploring this subject. We have Maura di Mauro. She is, she teaches intercultural management and as a double master at the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Piacenza. And she teaches in other universities and business schools, in master programs and PhD schools. She's a passionate intercultural trainer, coach, and expert in diversity, inclusion, sustainability, social innovation, specializing in training expats and managerial teams on the development of intercultural and global skills. From 2016 to 2019, Maura was the president of SIETAR Italia and board member of SIETAR Europe. Today, with SIETAR Italia, she is a co-creator and co-project manager of the Feeling Italian project. Today, we also have with us Professor Bettina Gehrke. She is professor in leadership and cross-cultural management at the Bocconi University in Milan School of Management. Beyond her extensive teaching experience with university students in Germany, Italy, China, and Russia, Bettina designs and teaches executive development programs for multinational companies across the world on issues of managing people globally. Bettina has been a SIETAR member for 30 years and is currently engaged with SIETAR Italy on the project on multicultural identities and the challenges of migration. Our third speaker with us is Tanor Gomes. He's a multilingual consultant in intercultural communication skills, and he's based here in Toronto. He was born in Brazil to Italian and Spanish parents, and he has also lived in Brazil, the US, Italy, the UK, and Germany. He started his professional life as a civil engineer, but later he became a partner of the Language and Cultural Training Institution, where he customized programs for engineers on international assignments. And since 1997, he focused to the support of multinational corporations on intercultural communication issues. So thank you all for participating. And I would like to start the webinar with a question to Tanor. Tanor, hello, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me just start saying what struck you the most about this book, Feeling Italian, which is a photographic book, and we will have a chance to see it throughout the webinar.
Right. When I read this book, not just late last year, it put me to thinking about my own identity. It took me right into my nonna's arms when I was a child, my Italian grandmother in Brazil, and everything around her and everything Italian about our lives back then. And this book made me reflect really upon the probably the rewards and challenges of having such a multicultural background. There are rewards and there are also challenges. So if I think about my identity, I keep asking myself, and this has been a permanent question in my life, where do I belong? What is it about these plural identities? Who am I? And this is a very interesting, I can say interesting dilemma. It's almost a paradox. And we don't always get answers. Probably we rarely get answers, but we get questions that make us think further and further and then develop that way. When we come from a background that that is so multicultural, having lived and worked in so many different countries, your boundaries are not clear. Where does my Brazilianness end and where does my Italianness begin? And having lived in the United States for 7 years, then back and forth between Brazil and Italy for periods of time, and now in Canada, I also lived 3 years in England. So that is a very interesting issue, but not necessarily comfortable. And the questions we ask, and probably many people that are in this webinar today, ask themselves similar questions. What are our boundaries? You know, what about our certainty of belonging, or how about our identities? This is a very wonderful topic, and the book really turned to be a very pleasant and interesting reading.
Absolutely. And it's true, the book, we will see pages, I'll tell the audience, we're sharing the screen in a bit. It really is a picture, it's a flash of Italy today, what it means to be Italian. And you'll see it's not the Italy of 100 years ago, it's not the Italy of 50 years ago. Contemporary Italy is a wonderful potpourri of identities, cultural identities, but with some very strong points. So to introduce the book, I would like to invite on stage, on our virtual stage, Professor Gehrke, Bettina, to talk about a little bit about the project and how the book and how it developed.
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting us. It's a great pleasure to such an international audience to share our books. And maybe, Maura, you can share also the screen, the slideshow, because obviously we do not only want to talk, but we would like you also to look at the pictures. So I think we can move on immediately, because I think the first one, so we maybe stop here. In fact, I would like to start with giving you some context about how the book came into being. Actually, for us, for Maura and myself and for SIETAR Italy, it's not only the photo book you're seeing now, or you're going to see in a minute, but the book actually is for us part of a wider research and training project. With the objective to stimulate the intercultural dialogue and mutual understanding in the increasing multicultural society in Italy. So you heard already about SIETAR Italy. We are actually a small group of volunteers engaged into this subject, and we have been working for quite a few years in order to promoting this issue of multicultural identities. And we have organized conferences, seminars, workshops. After years of being in our circle of like-minded people, we felt a strong need to push the public dialogue in Italy a little bit further. So we wanted to go deeper also to understanding what Tanor before explained, the questions we have, what is going on for people moving again, you know, the subject of immigration in Italy becoming more vivid. So we really felt that it was important to have a deeper understanding. So I had a look at your names and what you wrote in the chat box. I think I'm assuming that most of the people present here today actually carry some multicultural imprint. Because I think nobody is denying, and Tanor has been a beautiful introductory example, is that it's not only the culture we are born in which is forming us, but we are influenced by many different cultures. So that's, in fact, exactly as Tanor was saying, this is why the notion of identity is so important to interculturalists. So identity, be it personal, religious, ethnic, or national identity, it is really through learning about our own identity and about the identity of others that we come to know what makes us similar and what makes us different. And this is really important, or I call it really, this is the core of the intercultural dialogue, where we are constantly adding new layers to our identity without trying to lose also our roots. So I'm coming from an academic background, so I just can tell you there's a wide range of theories that discuss the link between self and the social. But we wanted to go beyond the typical academic discourse. We wanted to do something more innovative, and most over, we wanted to do something which touched better the emotions of the people. If you want, you know, also the gut feeling, because I think we all agree talking about multicultural identity is something really complex. And we wanted to bring the discourse, the public discourse, that we're going beyond this typical black and white image people are using when we are addressing the issue of multicultural identity. So this is exactly the reason why we decided to use the photographic language. And here on these pictures here, actually, we decided by using images and the stories and the narratives of the authors taking the images, we wanted to show the various and very multifaceted ways the feeling Italian today can be expressed. And what are the thoughts and the stories people relate to these images? So here, in fact, you see we had a public call. We had an international call, and we received through these international calls pictures from professional photographers, from amateurs, more than 600 images. And Maura, if you just could pass to the next slide. In fact, we had an international jury made out of communication specialists. We had representatives from the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Italy. We had interculturalists, people from culture associations. And here you see they're making the selection out of the 600 pictures, and they have chosen actually 89 pictures and about 27 authors actually, and there are the selected pictures you are finding now in this book. So in fact, there are 24 photographs with 89 projects. Okay, so with the next slides, you see actually the questions we asked. And as Tanor said, we have to start the dialogue with asking the right questions. So the question we asked actually was, who are the Italians today? And what are the behaviors, places, situations, activities, and symbols that evoke Italianness? And what are the elements of continuity with the past, and also, you know, which allow us to be perceived or to perceive Italians. And also we were interested to understand the transformation which is going on in Italy. We asked actually the photographs to respond to these questions through their images. And then it's actually, it was my job together with Maura that we were trying to structure this enormous richness we received. And we divided it in 4 chapters we are like to present you now. And I would pass to Maura, who maybe can introduce the first chapter of the book.
Okay, thank you, Bettina. Thank you so much at the Istituto Italiano di Cultura of Toronto. It's such a pleasure for me to be here with you today and to have the opportunity to present outside Italy the book we created. Yes, I'm going to introduce you at the first chapter of the book, what we call the traditional Italian identity. And before starting to show you the pictures, I also would like to comment some of your ideas and concepts that came out at the question, what does it mean to feel Italian for you? Because actually you answer it in a small in a few words, what we asked to our photographers. And yes, someone else adding that identity. Let me read it because it could be useful. Person identify, affinity to. Okay, well, what came out and what was our theories, as Bettina said, that first of all, we challenged the concept of belonging. So already with the conference that we organized in 2017, we started to deeper the topic of identity, but also at that time we understood that talking about belonging, it means to associate the identity with one dimension. Like if you belong to a group or to separate groups, you are using a concept of the identity which is which might not be integrated, and it might not take in consideration the circumstances, because identity, it's true that it's something that it's not something we hold, it's not something that we have or not have, but it's something that someone noted down in the chat. It's something that depends, especially for hybrid people with a hybrid identity. It's something that really depends from circumstance to circumstance. Identity is always built, is affirmed into the action, has to do with personal agency, but also with social context, and is always negotiated. So it's not something fixed, but it's something always dynamic and always fluid. And I saw some of your comments agree with this conception of identity. And the photographer that answered to our question, sending us pictures and stories, their own stories, they were not only Italians. We received pictures and photographers by some people with migrants background living in Italy, but also from some people with Italian ancestor living in South America and in North America and Southeast Asia, for instance. And we also received pictures from people who spent a period of time in Italy, and even if they don't have any heritage connection with Italy, they are very passionate about Italy. And of course, what came out is a pictures, is a portrait which integrate all this possible conception that goes behind the concept of belonging. But we might all agree also that even though identity is connected with uniqueness, we can decide into the action, into decision, or in how we speak about our Italianness. We can decide if we want to confirm a traditional narration, or if we want to alternate a traditional narration. And what we found out that many people, actually the majority of the people, send us pictures and stories that can somehow confirm a traditional narration of what feeling Italian mean, or what Italianness might mean. And I'm showing you some of the pictures. Of course, cuisine, which is also present in your comments, couldn't not be into this chapter, because we all agree that the food is so important for its variety and for the Italian heritage. We have here this storytelling about a Brazilian with Italian heritage that came to visit for the first time her Italian family in Calabria, and those are the pictures of some family situations. Here we have these portraits of an Italian photographer, Momento Mei. Memento Mei means also remember me. And Valentina De Santis decided to tell her stories about what feeling Italian means, coming back from a long trip abroad. Once she came back from her trip, she felt the need to go deeper in her Italian roots and in her multiple feeling of belonging. And what she did was collecting in her in the house of where she grew up, in her family house. She started to collect objects and old photographers of her family components. And you see here there are images, the grandmother and the mother, with small objects that belong to them. And for her, rethinking about what feeling Italian can mean for her was about recalling those important elements of her childhoodness and about her family. So family is definitely another important element of the traditional Italian concept, even though the family today are very different from the family of 30, 40 years ago. Then many of you wrote down in the chat about the beauty, the style, the art, the cultural heritage, and indeed it's present also in our first chapter. And this is the pictures by Sensi Lorente. She's from Sevilla, from Spain, and she's a professional photographer, a fashion professional photographer who spent 2-3 years of her life studying in Florence. And she was affected by the Renaissance in her work, even today. And this is the new Renaissance portrait she sent us. And for her is the concept of beauty. And the concept of beauty for Italians has to do also, as we said, with style, with an aesthetic style, which is not only connected with art and design, but also with dealing with handling relationship in a certain way. And then some of you also wrote about fate. And indeed, as you can see, fate is also present in our first chapter. But this is a particular storytelling about a procession, the Santa Cruz procession in the land of Franciacorta. Maybe you know Franciacorta because of the sparkling wine and the champagne. Is a very well-known area, which is actually also part of the intangible cultural heritage of Italy, also because the wine production and the quality of the wine production. And these images, actually, and through our 5 pictures, represents the first Sunday of May that every year take place in this area to wish prosperity of the field, of the graves, and where, of course, religion belief and religion's beliefs is mixed up with paganism rituals. And you see also today we can say that in the Italian society, of course, the majority of the Italians are still Catholic, but there is more and more presence of different religions. And we can also say that we have less practitioner, but the traditional rituals are part of the cultural heritage, which is another way to enjoy and to feel the sense of belonging connected to faith. And then this is the last photo project of our chapter, and is dedicated to immobility. And those are original are 5 pictures, and they all represent Italian people standing and waiting for diving help, or for something that is going to change the everyday life, or even more. Immobility, it's part definitely of Italy, because we have, for instance, one of the lowest social mobility in Europe, definitely. And because faith, also the Catholic faith, or the somehow waiting for the help of God, or wishing for the help of God, or waiting for the help of some important connection or some important relationship, is what can really change your life. And those are all the projects. What can we say? Definitely, they represent also many of the concepts that I read in the chart. And they also represent some stereotypes, if we want, some cliché about Italian identity. But we also need to be aware of the fact that stereotypes is not that they exist or not exist, or that you have it or you do not have it. Stereotypes are a way to narrate about a cultural identity in somehow. And they are also part of the experience of what feeling Italian means for some people. It's part of our self-representation, and it's part of the cultural narration in somehow. And indeed, the first time we showed these pictures to young people of the millennial category, we can say, many of them didn't recognize themselves in those elements of the Italian culture, or they recognize themselves only at some points, but not completely. And this is, it's a starting point to start to reflect about the stereotypes. Is also the first, it's the first knowledge we might have about a culture, but it's also the starting point. In order to know better a culture, we need to deeper the knowledge and go behind stereotypes. Or it's also possible that not everybody, of course, fits into the stereotypes. But it's part of the cultural narration. And I would like to invite Tanor to read this story.
With great pleasure. So let's read the Red Tomatoes in the Garage. This was written by Camila Chiade. She's born in Brazil. She's a Brazilian Italian. When I came to Italy to learn about my origins, I came across a familiar scene. In Brazil, in fact, I had often heard my grandparents talk of homemade tomato sauce. However, in my tropical imagination, I had no idea that tomatoes didn't grow every month of the year. I didn't know about the importance of the summer harvest or about the wisdom of preserving the sauce for the winter. There were no garages in my mind because at the time of my grandparents' stories, there were no cars. There were no Havaiana flip-flops, which are produced in Brazil and worn to make the sauce. There were no bins to boil the water and bottles, nor there was the scorching heat of a Calabrian August. Everything was piping hot. The tomatoes on the fire, the sun on our heads, but the atmosphere created by colors, smells, and sounds was enchanting. Making the sauce is an annual ritual. It still resists, even if it's losing some ground.
Thank you so much, Tanor. We have a comment. Sorry, Maura, I was on the phone helping. Okay, no, sorry. There was a technical problem which I notify, but I hope everything is fine with the audio and the video.
Mm-hmm. So I thank you very much, because here also you see how important for us were not only the picture, but also always the narration behind the picture. And this, I think, in fact, is the richness we really wanted to gain through our project. So we can have a look, Maura, if you can process. So this is another picture which you will find in the second chapter of our book. In fact, it's called Casa Mia by Giorgia Subacqui. And here, in fact, you see, I don't know, what is your image, what we're seeing? So on the left side, you see the Sunday of the culture, of the football. In the middle, you see religious symbol. On the right, you see again food and the pasta. I don't know if you understand what this picture, how is it composed? Actually, it's a composition made by Georgia's cell phone. And actually it's expressed her bonds between Italy and its Italian values as it is through the colors of the Italian flag, green, white, red. And in fact, let me also here read how she's interpreted. So green.
There is an audio problem, Bettina.
Father and son used to watch the... Can't you hear me?
No, okay, you need to restart. Can you restart?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm like to read how Georgia described her photo composition. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
So green, football. If years ago, father and son used to watch the Sunday afternoon game together, like a ritual, today the rules have changed. Football is no longer for men only. White, religion. Unlike what used to be in the past, today religion is no longer central to daily life of Italians. But the memory of it still remains in the small gestures of the elderly. Red, food and family. A few years ago, this family photo would have depicted the father at the head of the table and the woman standing serving the food. Today, the context has changed. Women are comfortably seated, but the pasta with tomato sauce remains the same. In fact, this is a picture of the chapter we called Identity in Movements. And we choose particularly this one because here you see how the author played with the stereotypical or traditional values. We spoke about it before, family, food, and religion, but she puts it in a different context. And this is also a typical picture because Giorgio Subacqui is a representative of the millennium generation in Italy. And here, in fact, you see how the traditional and the new behaviors and the meaning to it coexist and transform themselves. So the elements of tradition do not disappear altogether, but the more elements of it actually gets integrated, but do not cancel the others. So in fact, this is, we have other pictures which really nicely represent this evolutionary process of Italian identity, which is taking particular place also through culture exchange, and precisely also, in fact, performs into the multiple sides of longing. So you see this even better with the next picture. This is a picture done by Eva Maria Olszewska.
Okay, Bettina, there is a connection problem. We cannot hear you and you are froze.
But she has a Polish... you can't hear me again?
We lost you for a few seconds. So okay. you were introducing the photographer. You were naming the photographer.
So Eva Maria Olszewska has a Polish passport, but she considers herself Italian. She lives already for many years in Italy, and she is a fine observer about identity and movement in Italy. And here you see a picture she's taking of what she calls the Italians of the third millenniums, which is the Marian celebration in Bologna. And actually, this is funny, it's the first Sunday of May was the other religious celebration. Maura was introducing the same. This actually is a Marian celebration of the second Sunday of May. This is a situation, in fact, where every Sunday in May, the Marian cult gets celebrated in Bologna among the Coptic Eritreans and the Bolognian people. And here you see in this picture how the women and the men of Eritreans, Eritreans immigrants, dance and sing and beat to the drums, and while they're celebrating a very Catholic festivity, they are inviting also the people from Bologna on the streets to participate in this. And here, this is another example of identity in movement. It's, in fact, particularly with the religious context, it's a kind of culture syncretism. And this picture is really, you see as an example how religious rites get slightly alternated of their original meaning, or maybe not alternated, but reinterpret in a very undogmatic way, which is having actually through the presence of people of a different cultural roots. And in fact, we describe also, we give also a little bit our theoretical interpretation to these terms, and we framed this really, this chapter, which is illustrating these social processes in Italy as culture syncretism. This is chapter 2. Chapter 3 then moves, let's say, to something which is in fact connecting the global with the local conditions. And maybe Maura, you can take over and talk about some pictures of the third chapter.
Okay, thank you, Bettina. So we started to see some evolution of meanings of what does it mean to feel Italian for different people. And we also find something quite interesting. some of the photographers that answered to our call. Oh, Bettina, we forgot about this one, which is not very nice to say, but this is part of the second chapter. It's shall I go on and tell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. These pictures still belong to the second chapter, Identity Movement. As you can see, I don't know if you recognize it, but this is a picture of a place at the border between Lombardy region and Switzerland, which is a land with the Alps as a geographical border, but with no walls. Of course, there are no barriers, no checkpoints. And it's very interesting, the story of Giacomo Infantino that sent us places of what does it mean to feel Italian for him, because he said people who had lived or has spent his life, their own life on the borders, they never really asked if they belong to a nation or another nation. It's not what is so important to them. And indeed, the concept of living on the border, it's an important concept for living today in a global world, always more and more connected, and represent a challenge. As Tanor was mentioning, sharing his personal story with a hybrid identity where you don't know exactly where the border is, and sometimes it's not even important if you are integrated with yourself, if you feel confident, if you see the multiple belongings as a richness. This is a simple state of life, or it might be a choice of your life to be able to live continuously on the borders, and it can be a choice. The multicultural identity. So it's very connected with the other chapter that Bettina mentioned. It's the global challenges. Today, what we can say, we have more and more people interconnected and globals, definitely comparing to this, if we consider the post-Second World War, or if we consider even the beginning of the 70s, of the 80s, where traveling was still a luxury, or was having a global identity was something connected with diplomatic people. Today, we have more and more human mobilities for different reasons. And the ability to being able to live on the borders, it can be part of the intercultural competency that has to do with the awareness of the multicultural identity, but also, as I said, as a choice and an ability to connect with and to relate effective relationship with people at different parts of the globe. As I said, part of the photographers that send us some photo projects showed us social sensitivity. And indeed, we call this chapter the global challenges. Why did we call it the global challenges? Because what they actually represented as social Italian issues, in truth, they are not only Italian issues, but actually they are part of what the United Nations in 2030 sustainable objectives already define. Indeed, of the 17 sustainable development goals, 7 of them at least, they are connected with social issues. And it was very interesting. Emanuele Mirulla, sorry, he sent us those pictures, which are very evocative, very strong, emotional. The first one is the departure that represents the brain drain. Italy has one of the highest, not only of the lowest social mobility, but also one of the highest brain drain in Europe. So many Italians, they leave the country, high skills, particularly Italian, they leave the country because they are not satisfied with the offers of the Italian job market. Apology, can you hear well or badly? Because I have a terrible problem with my computer. Can you hear well, or is there any sound problem? Can you tell me?
We can hear you well, but there's a background noise somewhere.
Okay, I think it's the wind, my computer wind for some reason. I hope now it's better. I'm trying to hold it. So I was saying brain drain is one of the Italian social problem. Many of the Italians, they went to Germany, but many others to Canada. And another issues which can be considered the arrival point is the huge migration we have, especially in the last few years, and especially in 2018, 2019, in Europe, we had the refugee crisis, and Italy, of course, was one of the first country of destination, not so much in terms of necessarily in terms of numbers, but of course, many people associate Italy as a country of migrants destination. And here you can see the boat, which is normally the mean that migrants use to arrive to Italy. It's also the metaphor of a very similar phenomenon that in somehow connects the high skill brain drain with the migrants that are coming to looking for better opportunities. And this is Sara Cinelli. Also, Sara Cinelli, she sent us some portraits about students in Milan. One of the highest migration we have is from north to south, sorry, from south to north of Italy. Can you hear me? Because
Maura, we
bad audio.
We have a stronger background noise problem. Try
now,
again, please.
Do you have it?
Now it's fine.
Now, do you have a bad? Okay, yeah. Because okay, sorry about that. I think it's the heat. It's the heat in the computer that is running all day and is getting a little bit not working properly. Okay, sorry about that. I apologize. Anyway, I was saying 1 out of 5 students we have in the big cities in Italy.
Maura, maybe taken over, because I think it's really you are difficult to understand.
Okay. What about now?
Better.
Is it better? Okay.
Yes.
Should I try in case you take it over? Okay. So 1 out is bad. Okay. Then go over, please.
So I take over because this is a nice picture of one of these young, in fact,
I don't know why, Bettina, but I think yours is not better. Unfortunately, even your connection is very bad. Yes, you're frozen.
There is
too bad.
A big, difficult connection to Italy, I guess. Can you hear me? Is it bad? Oh gosh. Okay, I continue now for a while. Yes. It's really difficult to understand where the problem is. So this picture here is representing a young person actually who's not migrating outside Italy, but represent a photo project of a young professional photograph of the young generation. It's addressing the issue of the migration between the north and the south. A lot of young students who want to look for their luck in the northern part of Italy, coming from the south. So I would jump actually, because I would love also to keep some time later on to some questions from our audience. So I would go to our last chapter, which is the chapter where the transformation we have been asking for. We got really interesting photographs which representing actually a very unexpected Italy. And here I would love also to have, I'm getting now an introduction to log out and in. Is this correct? Shall I follow this? No. Okay, not you. Okay, it's Maura. Okay, so I continue. I'm sorry about these technical problems. So the last chapter is really surprising, very beautiful, showing a very colorful Italy. I would, since we have all this technical problem, at that point I would love Veronica, maybe if she, Veronica, if you could tell this story of, Nicola
multicultural, multi-ethnic families.
So
right.
Nicola Bortolusi is an architect from Milan and a professional photographer, and he took a very classical family picture from his best friend Andrea. So Veronica, if you would love to read his story.
And it's something very important that also construct a new Italian identity. We have more and more multi-racial families, multi-ethnic families, and so it's an honor. And I have to admit, it touches me very closely because I'm also Italian. My husband is Japanese American. My kids are mixed, but we are strongly feeling Italian. So I'm reading the story of Nicola Bortolusi. When Giorgio told me that he intended to make a change in his life and leave for Togo, West Africa, for a moment I was disoriented. How would my dear friend at the age of 48 adapt to a reality so different from ours? After having worked for many years as a tourist agent, visiting the most disparate places in the world, would he succeed in getting to know the world on the other side? Would he succeed in his plan to build a kindergarten? The answers are in this photograph. Not only did Giorgio live a fantastic experience lasting almost 3 years in Togo, but he met Eugenie, the woman who would later become his wife and the mother of his sons, Andrea. Now Giorgio, Eugenie, and Andrea live in Milan, and Andrea is a happy child. He's Milanese, he's Milanese in all respect, says his mother. And he's about to show his great interest to the country where he was born and loves its food. Eugenie found a job in Milan also, and Eugenie and Giorgio and their son Andrea are a family. For their friends and acquaintances, they are all unassuming role models.
So I might also, for those who are into football, the very important detail of this picture, which is the shirt of the little Andrea, so it's a cultural divide between if you're of Inter or Milan fan,
that's the only thing that I do not like in the picture.
Yeah, so the sense of belonging to football games is something I found surprisingly to learn about when I arrived in Italy. So thank you, Veronica, for reading also the story behind it, because this, in fact, started to become, the multi-ethnic families are becoming a new normality, in particular in Milan, which is probably the most multicultural, multi-ethnic town or city in Italy, but not only. And in this respect, I would like also to move to the next picture, which is the contact of multicultural between generations. This is also, in fact, have a look at these pictures, because I think I would like you also as an audience to make your own sense of feelings when you look at the pictures, before I'm going to read the story, because this is addressing, I think, a very important issue of the older generation, who is meeting a new changing in Italy and feels sometimes displaced. And this is the story of Martina Di Lauro. Let me read this to you. This is for me the new Italy, the old generation embracing the new one with love. I am a volunteer at a refugee center for women, where I had the pleasure of meeting this little princess. The old lady, on the other hand, is my grandmother. She has never crossed the border in her life and feels deeply confused by all these new guests. In 88 years of life, she had never had previously contact with people of color. One day, I took the little princess home for lunch. I went into my grandmother's room and put the girl on her bed. At first, my grandmother's eyes betrayed her puzzlement. It took her a few minutes to realize that this was just a child, a beautiful girl. Hers was not fear, but curiosity. They spent the whole day together, the child cradled by the old lady. Difference can often be frightening, especially for the elderly. But the potion to save our country from xenophobic thoughts and acts can just amount to a little bit more love. So this is another touching story. And to conclude the selection of the last chapter, Multicultural Identities, I would love Tanor to read also a picture done by a professional photographer. And here, unfortunately, in this small screen, it may make not such a big effect, but these are really also very strong, beautiful, colorful snapshot of a new Italy.
Thank you. So this has been written by Simone Sapia, and the name of the story is Afro-Italians. So for about 20 years, during the Easter weekend, thousands of Tijani Senegalese from all over Italy have been gathering for a day and a night in Conegliano, Veneto, for a great religious event. Prayers, can you hear me? Okay, so prayers, both individual and collective, take place in spaces that are not strictly religious, such as highway restaurants or sport halls. For this occasion, the Palazzetto Zoppa's arena becomes a sacred place in order to welcome an impressive flow of people, prayers, and songs throughout the night. Its outdoor spaces are occupied by stalls selling food, clothing, or religious objects. Through a pilgrimage, which has now become part of the Conegliano traditions, the landscape is transformed, and Senegal gets superimposed on our territory, thus highlighting the cultural fluidity that permeates contemporary Italy. Seen from this perspective, Italianness is enriched with the new cultural codes, blending seamlessly with Senegalism.
Thank you very much, Tanor. I just wonder if I'm back. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yep.
I got lost in the virtual space for some seconds. So this is I would open also the floor for comments from your side, for questions, for curiosities. but what we wanted to do, particularly if you see the last pictures, we wanted to give you a taste about how, in fact, living in a global and multicultural identities, the certainties we used to have about our sense of belonging are not so clear and are challenged. So asking how people identify themselves as part of their country, the country they were coming from, the country where they live, the nations, their city, or their ethnic groups, helps us to further understand if people in fact hold a global identity or not. And this was for us very important in this project. As I'm saying, for us, this project is not only this photo book, but we
it's only me having the audio problem now.
Also to do intercultural training in universities. And maybe also, Maura, you want to say more about it, because as we are saying, okay, am I lost? I'm sorry. So maybe Maura,
everybody.
Please, you try to take over. Sorry.
Okay, I plug in the LAN connection, so hopefully it will work better. Yes, what Bettina, I suppose, was saying is that and that's what I was trying to tell you with the chapter of global challenges, is that recognizing the fact that there are people who are global and they live very well on borders, but there are still people who are very rooted on the local identity, and they show our radicalization attitudes or behaviors toward the others. So with this book, we intended to raise the awareness about the multicultural identities today in a society that is changing and that is global. And we intended also to use the book as didactical material to help people to develop their own intercultural skills and their own global citizenship. The people who are global not necessarily have, or the cosmopolitans, so the people who used to travel for working reason, for studying reason, or because
Maura, scusa, prova a non muoverti. Quando ti muovi, purtroppo il segnale è disturbato.
Okay, so sorry about this connection. So we need to make it live, Veronica. Next time, impossible. So what I was saying is that there are people who travel because of different reasons, and not necessarily they have a global identity, global citizenship. Sorry, not a global identity, but a global citizenship. To be a global citizenship for us, it means to be aware of the cultural context and to be aware also about the actions that need to be taken in order to contribute to the social and cultural changing. So it's taking the responsibility, clearly not all the responsibility of the war, but as also the sustainable global sustainable development goals of UNESCO remind us. We are invited to live the world and living it for a better future for the new generations. And this is what the global citizenship is about. And this is what we meant to contribute also with our book, not only the knowledge about the changing society of Italy today, but also we wanted to contribute for the readers or for the ones who use the book in a didactical way, we want to contribute in the development of intercultural skills and global citizenship skills as well. Hopefully you could hear me well.
Maybe we could ask now Veronica, because she's the only one who probably has not a technical problem, to facilitate the moderation. So we would be happy to have your feedback if you really want to raise your hand and comment on it. What you liked about the pictures, if you think they were convincing, if you would like to know more how we're using this in our teaching, or about the future. So we would be happy to answer all the questions you might have. But since even independent, Maura and myself seem to have some technical problem, maybe Veronica, you can ask the audience and ask people, you know, raise your hand or just speak up as you like.
Well, I have a question here in the chat that the very first question saying, how has the book been received in Italy?
How it's received?
Received. So we had
when you presented in Italy or during your
we had the first presentation in Milan here. In fact, it was before the COVID. In fact, it was the only presentation we were really to make live residentially. And a lot of people have been surprised. A lot of people were not expecting, particularly the last chapter and all these pictures of you know, identity and movements, all this transition and transformation. A lot of pictures are representing. Yeah. So and it says, yeah, apparently the taking out that we are describing a new perception of Italy. Probably this would, I don't know if Maura has other views on that.
Right.
Maybe I also may say how it has been received outside Italy.
Yes.
Outside Italy, the people have been disappointed because they said, this is not the Italy we know. Because they were expecting pasta, mandolino, family, beauty, and this kind of things, and not the critical issue, not the reality, because we are showing a new reality.
True, and I think this is quite common when we talk to different Italians, different kind of Italians, that Italians of first generation, Italians in Italy, expat Italians, or Italians of second or third generation that have lived already abroad, and they still feel a very strong connection to Italy, but it was the Italy of their parents or grandparents. And so they have this idealized vision of Italy as it was, you know, told to them. It was a little bit like this utopic Italy, but Italy is, of course, it's a modern country that changes, and Italy, contemporary Italy, is not the Italy of when their grandparents or their great-grandparents emigrated and left. So, but I have actually an interesting questions. I read it aloud for everybody to hear. It's from Nur El-Zaim. Born in Syria, raised in Germany 14 years, lived in France 8 years, back to Syria, immigrated to Canada 21 years ago. Family connection to Italy, I embrace all these cultures and feel I belong to all of them, some more than others. Bettina or Mauro would like to comment. Yes. I think this would be, it's an exact example of not really Italian, feeling Italian, but feeling as a global citizen, of a citizen of the world.
Yeah. I also think interesting the comment what is Michael just put in the chat. It's about how this has affected the language. To be honest, I think this is worth another research project, how this is connecting really into the new language. Obviously, implicitly, this was also our intention, because we wanted to talk about multiculturalism, and we want to offer the stories behind it, which bring us away from the stereotypical black and white image. We need a language which is representing the fluidity and the coexistence of contradicting identities. And obviously this has not entirely entered into the public discourse, for sure. Yeah, I think this is interesting, in fact, to follow up on that, how really specifically the language is used. Very important. Thank you for this comment.
I would say, in your experiences, you know, having held several workshops around the world on this specific topic, what is the most common comment, idea that came up from your different experiences on feeling Italian? What was the most recurrent, so to speak, word or image or opinion on this?
Maura?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me. I would say
I know
that
it's difficult for Italians not to move when they talk and use the gesture.
It's not my headphone. It's not the problem on my headphone. Anyway, the same concepts that were in the comments here. So definitely food, family, religions, cultural heritage, I will say the same, which are also present indeed in our first chapter. And we have to say that the majority of the pictures we received were about stereotypes. We received plenty of pictures about the Roman life, the movies that we used to see during the 50s, which don't exist anymore, as you were saying, Veronica. The majority of the people that send us pictures were very old representation of Italy, or they were cliche based also on other languages that already narrated the Italian culture. And that's why we started from that chapter. But with knowing also that this was the risk of this photo context, indeed, in our questions that we asked into the call, in the photo context call, we also asked what are the innovations, cultural innovation elements you recognize today? What are the process of changing you can recognize today? And also with those questions, we were able to gather new concepts which make the second, third, and fourth chapters of our book. Without those other questions, we probably would have collected only cliche and stereotypes. But we wanted to go behind those, and we started to ask questions that could avoid also to receive only stereotypes.
In fact, stereotype, Letizia, in her comment in the chat, introduced this concept of otherness. And I think this, in fact, to putting otherness in context gets a completely different meaning. Most of us, our intention is obviously, first of all, to raise awareness for these issues. And raising awareness for the multiple aspects of otherness and differences, and that the feeling of belonging is a very complicated one. So the idea is obviously of the intercultural dialogue that you stop doing the distinction between us and them, or we and them, but that we create, let's say, this is, let's say also the concept Maura was mentioning about global citizenship, is that we feel part of a global common community and also responsible versus the global community, but at the same time we have to link to the local roots we have. And this is, in fact, it's highly recognized to be this one of the competence of the 21st century. Maura was mentioning the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which are also strongly basing on the competences of global citizenship, which is exactly this, being not speaking about otherness, but being a bridge makers between the global and the local dimension. And it's difficult, and not only in Italy. I think Canada is also a beautiful example, which is trying to make a strong effort to be multicultural. And I think you know better than me that the challenges are everywhere, but raising the level of awareness with projects like this is the only way to start, in my opinion.
Yeah. But thank you very much. I think
maybe also,
if there are no other questions, I would thank very much Maura, Mauro, Bettina, Gehrke, and Tanor Gomes for their participation in this really exciting and engaging process and project of exploring the Italian cultural identity. I do hope to have you back once COVID is over and behind us in the future on in an auditorium at the Institute or in Toronto to discuss in person and really to really delve into this issue, because it's really strongly felt. I do believe it, and there's a large community here in Toronto, in Ontario, in Canada, an Italian Canadian community, and I hear it over and over what it means to be Italian and or Italian Canadian. It's something that is very close and felt by thousands of people. And it's really a way to explore and present also Italy today, beyond, as we were saying, beyond the stereotypes. So thank you very much. And I see here I see you have a slide. If somebody is interested in purchasing and or obtaining the book Feeling Italian, I think you can buy it on Amazon. So that would be also pretty easy for Torontonian and Canadian and or US viewers to get a hold of the book. So thank you very much. Thank you for all your work, and I wish you good luck in future workshops.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share this. And I think thank you also for our special guest Tanor, who actually connected us across the Atlantic Ocean. And as I think it's somebody in the beginning said, you know, feeling Italian is, I always feel Italian wherever I am. I think this was one of the comments in the beginning at the chat box. And yeah, it's lovely to prove this, whatever nationality you have or wherever you come from. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and thanks all our viewers for following us.
Yes,
Goodbye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Maura, Bettina. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.